Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Gwen Allison from My Spiritual Butterfly. I'm a Reiki Master teacher and a transformational life coach. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the fabulous and hugely knowledgeable and intuitive Yolanda Williams. Now, Yolanda is a teacher of energetic alchemy. She's an intuitive mentor and host of the Reiki Radio Podcast. She's also certified in wellness counseling through Cornell University and uses a blend of techniques to help clients and students achieve deeper understanding of themselves and initiate re-identification. So through her podcast, Reiki Radio, Yolanda shares tools to support your spiritual journey, including interviews with healers and authors who practice techniques from various traditions. So Yolanda is also a global Reiki Master teacher who's trained with internationally recognized Reiki Masters in the lineages of Usui Reiki Ryoho and Jikiden Reiki. She teaches all levels of Usui Reiki Ryoho in San Diego, so lucky, as well as mentoring and facilitating intuitive awakening courses online. Yolanda has trained with shamans and healers of various modalities, increasing her intuitive abilities and exploration of transformative self-observation. She recently created an oracle deck for seekers and practitioners of energetic alchemy and runs group virtual classes through the Alchemy Circle, which is open to practitioners of all levels and lineages. Welcome, Yolanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. It's so lovely to have you here. Now, just to kind of explain, I wanted to explain to those watching or listening how we kind of met. So you were interviewing me for the Reiki Healing Summit, which is going to be starting in November, and also for your podcast, Reiki Radio. And that was the first time I'd come across you. What was just really refreshing for me was that you were a woman of color. And I don't come across many women of color in Reiki in sort of like a high profile sort of space, really high profile position. So it was really wonderful to kind of meet you and see you. I think we really connected as well when we spoke, loving your energy and what you're doing. Some synergies in that we're doing so many different things, not just like Reiki. So I couldn't wait to kind of get you on today to come and talk to me. I wanted to find out more about you, super curious to kind of know about your sort of beginnings in all of this and what's kind of happening for you and how you're working in this space. So, but yeah, welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it was very exciting for me too to meet you through the summit, and thankful that you came on Reiki Radio as well.
Oh, thank you. So I've got a list of questions here for you, and just starting with the first one. So I guess my first question, as I said, I really want to find out how you came into this today. So before you stepped onto the path of Reiki and energetic alchemy, who were you? What was your life like? And how did it feel compared to the life that you're living now?
What's such a beautiful way to ask that question. It's never been posed that way. Like, who were you before? That's so nice. I was working in corporate America. I worked for an international bank, HSBC actually, which isn't common here in America, but I worked for their corporate offices in compliance. So I had a very traditional type of job, worked too much, as most people do over here. And it was one of those people that honestly, at that time, I was in my early 30s and I was overly stressed. And I probably would have stayed in that position just because it was what you think you're supposed to do. I used to go to happy hour every Friday and Saturday and Sunday with my friends. Yeah. So every, Monday through Friday was work and weekends were drinking and having fun with friends. And I was living what I thought was fun. I don't necessarily, looking back, I don't think I felt unfulfilled because I had a nice work-life balance. But I was stressed. I was very, very stressed. So at some point, the division that I worked for, we got bought out by another international bank, Santander. And to keep my job, I would have had to move to Texas. And I want to move to Texas. I mean, it's a lovely place, but no. So I took my severance package, and initially I went to the UK. I went by myself, and I saw Paris as well. I just felt like a sense of relief. I didn't realize how stressed I was until I was out of that environment. So I took a minute to just breathe and visit my family and just see what it was like to not have the pressures of work. But then, life catches up, and I realized, oh my God, I have to go back to work. And then the stress came right back. So yeah, that's pretty much right before finding Reiki. That's where I was.
Yeah, that's it. It sounds like a bit of a common story. It definitely resonates with my story in the corporate world, also at financial banking. I was in IT, worked a lot with compliance.
Yes.
HSBC is very common in the UK. So we have
Right.
one of a high street branch of banking as well in the UK. But yeah, I think your story resonates probably with a lot of people in terms of looking for something different and realizing that they can't sustain that kind of life, that fast pace of life, and wanting to slow down and go inwards a little bit and see what's there. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
So are there any kind of key moments then or influences that shaped your spiritual journey? What did you do when you realized that you couldn't sort of go on anymore? What were the influences there?
Yeah. I mean, because again, I was in the mindset of this is what you're supposed to do. So I really, that layoff was like a blessing in disguise for me, because I never would have left. I would have just kept, going even at the cost of my sanity. But when I got back from visiting family, got back from just traveling a little bit, I started to stress out, like I said. And I had this one day where I literally was in the fetal position on my bedroom floor crying, which was also very unlike me. Like I was not, my mom was a very much pick yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going kind of woman. So the fact that I was breaking down like that day was shocking to my system. But in the middle of it all, I had this quick moment of clarity where I stopped crying, and this weird sense of like calm just completely took over my body. And the first thought that popped into my mind was call this astrologer that I hadn't spoken to in, at that point, maybe 10 years. And the reason I hadn't spoken to her is because the first time I met her, she was so accurate, it scared me. So I was like, yeah, I'm good. I don't know how this lady knew all this stuff about me and my life and my childhood. And, anyway, she popped in my mind. So at that point, I was desperate. So I reached out to her, and she was telling me that based on my chart, that basically she was like, you would be good at, intuitive work and seeing people's chakras, and you're a healer, and you should work with people in transition, like crossing over. And I was like, no, this lady is crazy. But she said also that I should take up meditation and also have a Reiki session. So I had never heard of Reiki at that time. I had never meditated before. So I went home, I Googled both. That day, I signed up for a meditation class and I signed up for a Reiki class. I skipped the whole session thing because I was like, this sounds weird. What is this, right? So I was like, I'm just going straight for a class. So that was life-changing for me. I mean, I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was going to just try these things out to alleviate my stress so I could get clear enough about what direction I wanted to take. But what happened was I was fascinated by Reiki. I had no expectations. I didn't know what this was. So to go into meditation and have those experiences of calming the mind and expanding your mind in that way, and then to learn Reiki and to start feeling energy in the ways that I was, and it was all just so fascinating. So I started practicing on my friends, like, hey, come over, let me try this thing on you. And because of their response and what they would experience, they started referring people to me. So then before you know it, I started building a practice, but it wasn't my intention. It just was something that started to evolve.
It's incredible. So did you ever have, prior to your experience with Reiki, did you ever have any kind of spiritual experiences at all outside of, any sort of healing modalities?
Yeah. Although back then it didn't feel like that's what it was. I didn't know that's what it was, of course. So I think back when I lived in DC, I was young, like 3 to 5. I can remember I would see this pink see-through lady in the kitchen at night, translucent woman. And I was always one of those kids that, I was terrified to sleep by myself because I'd always see things in the room. But, people always tell the kids they're making it up. I saw things in the room. But then fast forward to when I was a teenager, and the first time this happened, I was 15, and I started having these experiences of sleep paralysis. And I really struggle with that term only because the way people usually describe it is kind of like, oh yeah, you're awake and asleep, but your body's asleep, you're kind of awake. No. These states, and thankfully I've heard other people talk about it now, your body is asleep, so to speak. You can't move, but you're very much awake. But at the same time, I would have this awareness of different energies in the room. But it was like I could not move. Like all I could do was breathe. And my eyes would be like slightly open so I could see what was going on in the room. I would sleep with the TV on, so all the things, right? So that went on for years, and it was so bad that I would try to sleep with the light on. I would try all kinds of things, and it just wouldn't go away. And then growing up, I was always the friend that was very I was introverted in a lot of ways, but when I would meet new people or go to certain environments, if it felt off to me, I would just completely shut down. And so my friends would always be like, oh, be nice, be more friendly, be like, something just felt off, right? But then you don't really understand it, so you don't have the language for it. So then it's just projected on you that you're introverted and that you're not friendly and all of these things, which weren't true. I just didn't understand my sensitivity to energy back then. So yeah, studying Reiki definitely has given me so much understanding about those earlier years of my life, and wish I knew it then, but glad I know it now.
Yeah, sleep paralysis. I think I remember experiencing it a few times as a child. And I think I see what you mean. It is really terrifying. It isn't just something like, oh, you're awake and you're in a light sleep, or it is quite terrifying because sometimes some things can be happening around you, as you say, and you really want to wake up and you can't. So it's suffering that for years is just like, wow, must have been a lot. How old were you when that was kind of going on?
So it started when I was 15, and for a while it was almost every single night. And my mom is also very familiar with, I would say, like esoteric things and paranormal things. So at that time, though, she took me to get a EEG to make sure I wasn't having like little seizures or something. Because my stepdad at the time, he was a doctor, and he was like, go check her out. And I remember I was so annoyed with my mom because I was like, that's not what this is. And it wasn't. Yeah, but it is terrifying. So now it happens, maybe I can count on one hand how many times it happens a year, but I'm kind of used to it now too.
Okay, how do you get through it? Do you just let it pass?
Yeah, so before I used to go into a lot of resistance where I was like fighting to try to move my body. And then you finally have that moment of breakthrough where it's like, and you feel like you're catching your breath. Now I try to relax a little more into it, but the challenge is where I don't completely surrender is because sometimes it literally feels like you're about to have an out-of-body experience. And so that sensation of I'm coming out of my body, but it's not intentional, is still a little like jarring. So there's a piece of me that does resist a bit, but not as much as I used to.
That sounds like it might be the next step for you. Astral travel.
Yeah.
What's to London?
I've been twice. Yes, I'll come visit.
Okay. Come visit me when it happens again.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people experience it. Thank you for sharing that. It's really interesting. So in terms of, so obviously you decided, similar to me again, I think I had one Reiki session and then decided to learn it myself. And then you've done the same thing. You've gone straight for it and just started learning it and obviously practicing it. So when did you actually decide to start teaching? What, I know you said your friends and family were kind of your guinea pigs at the time, and that was fine. So did it just organically move into you deciding, actually, I'm going to find a space and start teaching the public?
Yes,
Was that how soon after you? Okay.
No, so it was a little bit of just practicing on friends, and luckily, in a way, my family all lived on the East Coast, and I'm in California, so 3,000 miles away. So I got to practice a lot of the Inkaku or remote sessions with my family, which let me fall in love with that because, you know, that's a practice a lot of people often question or struggle with. But I had a lot of practice with that. And I would say it was about a year of practicing on my friends. And not only that, I've had several Reiki teachers over the years. So the kind of the timeline, I would say I practiced on friends for about a year. At that time, I had already taken some versions of level 1, 2, and 3. Then I had a few friends ask me to attune them. So I had like these mock smaller little classes that weren't official. They were just for friends. And then same thing, friends started recommending people come to me for classes. So one of my very first Reiki classes was a group of people that were referred by a friend of mine. And and I loved it. It was a lot of fun to share Reiki in that way. But also it made me more diligent in my practice, where I felt more accountable to, I got to really understand this. I really have to apply this to me. I really have to experiment with this, because when people are coming and they have questions, or people are coming and they have experiences, I have to really. So that even made me a little more, you know, diligent about how deep I would allow myself to go with energy healing. So I started teaching, I would say, maybe 2 years in. And around that same time, I started the podcast, Reiki Radio. And the reason that was because when I first started Reiki and got into this realm, one, back then, there were no podcasts about it. You had books, maybe a few blogs, but it wasn't as accessible as it is now, where you can just Google it and all kinds of videos will pop up, right? But what I heard everyone was saying, like, oh, this is so beautiful, sunshine and rainbows, it's so loving, it's so great. And it was, at first, it was like, I was amazed. But then what started happening, which wasn't really explained to me, is the healing part started kicking in. So then I started feeling like, I called it being spiritually undone. Like I was like, what is happening to me? Emotions started erupting. I started looking at the world, questioning all kinds of things, memories, and I would even say like deep introspection about who I was and why I was, where my behavior stemmed from. And it was a lot. It was really overwhelming, and no one was talking about that aspect, right? I was like, this isn't sunshine and rainbows. This is like, I'm crying over here. I'm like, am I doing this right? What is happening, right? And I mean, of course, hindsight is beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful what was happening, but because no one told me, I didn't know if I had done something wrong, so to speak. And so I decided to do the podcast. I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk about what I'm going through. And if there's anyone else going through this, then they'll know they're not alone in this. And something in me started to realize this is part of healing, which isn't necessarily pretty, but people need to start talking about this. So that's how the podcast started. And then from there, I would say it's maybe a year or more before I even knew anyone was listening to the podcast. And then I started getting emails. And then once that happened, I started getting requests to teach classes online. So then that's where that came in. So yeah, it's literally been an evolution with really no plan.
Wow, which is the best way sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Just go where you're guided.
Yeah.
But definitely resonate with what you're saying about the experience. I don't like the phrase, I don't know about you, but I don't particularly like the phrase Reiki healing crisis. But I do feel it's part of the Reiki journey when people, even if a client comes with some healing, you know, I prepare them and I teach my students to prepare them for the fact that in the next 3 days, things may come up as part of your healing based on your intention. And people are coming there. They're not just coming to say, oh, I just want to relax. They're coming with some deep intentions and shifts and things they want to kind of blocks they want to release. And so based on that, they're having experiences like that the next day. They'll leave the couch feeling floating on air, feeling great.
Yes.
The next day they'll be in floods of tears. But they understand it's part of their healing and it has to come up and out because we've kept it in the body. So yeah, I completely resonate with the fact that Reiki isn't just, you know, fires and rainbows and just relax like having a massage. It's not, it can go deep depending on the person's intention. So yeah, it's great that you decided to focus on that in terms of Reiki Radio and explore that with people because it's very powerful.
Yeah.
You know, because some people end up exploring other things and modalities without fully going into the depths of Reiki, knowing it can go there too. It can really go there and it can complement everything else that they do. They don't have to leave it behind. But yeah, it's an incredible journey and as you say, an organic one in a way. It's good that you reflected rather than going, right, I'm not going to do Reiki anymore. It's awful. You've gone, right, people need to talk about this. So something really beautiful emerged from that experience.
Yes.
It was lovely. So speaking of Reiki Radio then, so you've obviously had the opportunity to speak to many fascinating people on Reiki Radio and some people who I've authors, I've read their books and some real prime people there. I think I said to you, I could see on the podcast data that you'd done 300 podcasts, but you said it's a lot more than that. 300 is just the limit that it can sort of hold, if that makes sense. So is there a guest or conversation that has kind of stayed with you and maybe impacted you in a way that you didn't expect?
Yeah. So I would say definitely Franz Steiner was a very significant interview for me. One, because I hadn't heard of him prior to having the opportunity to interview him. Yeah.
Okay.
So with Reiki Radio, I did the podcast religiously, like weekly. I showed up. I didn't miss a week for like 2 or 3 years. And then I think it might have been like 3 years. And then I reached a point where I was like, I have nothing else to say. So I literally said goodbye on the podcast. I was like, it's been fun. Adios. Yeah. And I took a year off. And then the only reason I came back is I started then getting all these emails. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people have been listening. I really didn't know. And people are like, where'd you go? I just found the podcast. Are you coming back? Like, what are you doing? Right. So it's like, oh, wow. Okay, I'll come back. So I came back, but this time I started getting requests for interviews, which before it was just me talking by myself. So I started getting these requests for interviews, and Franz was one of them. His publisher reached out. He had just written a book at the time called The Inner Heart of Reiki. And so they sent me, the publisher sent me the PDF so I could read the book prior to the interview because it wasn't out yet. And so when I read his book, it was just shocking to my system because he was talking about everything I had been experiencing that I hadn't heard anyone talk about before. So to say, I mean, I was beyond excited. I couldn't believe that. And if you read the book, you'll resonate. Yeah. It's very, but at that time, really, I hadn't heard anyone say those things. So I interviewed him and I kind of joked because he lives in Holland, I believe. He does. Yeah, I think. But I said, if you're ever in the United States, I'm coming to train with you. He's like, I come to LA once a year. I said, I'll be there. And ever since then, every year when he would come to Los Angeles, I would go take his Shimpenden class. And yeah, he's become, I consider, 2 main teachers of mine, one being him and the other being Arjava Petter. So thankful for that interview. That changed a lot of direction in my practice.
Yeah, they've been very influential in terms of my Reiki journey. I love Frank Ajavapeta as well. I mean, his book is just crumpled with overreading and referencing because he's a bit of a historian as well. He's gone over, done a lot of research, and a lot of his information I bring into my Reiki Masterclass. So they're two of my biggest heroes in Reiki.
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And he's a real character as well, Franz Stein. He's not staid and boring. He's so jovial and funny, and I like that because I think it's important for people to realize that spirituality doesn't have to be so serious. And
he's very playful. Like, he literally dances in class, will do cartwheels. I mean, he's definitely, he's like a living elf. But a very tall one. But he's very funny.
Yeah, he's full of joy. I love him so much. That's incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. So that was a really pivotal interview and turning point for you, which is great. So in terms of, is there anyone in the Reiki world that you've yet to interview? That question's just coming to me that you really wish you could. Have you done, everybody?
You really know what's really funny? No, but this is really true. And I know it probably blows people's minds because I do the podcast and because I started the podcast in 2013, and actually yesterday was the 11-year anniversary of starting Reiki Radio. But when I first came into this, remember, I had no idea what any of this was. So I had no clue of like the spiritual teachers and who was well known and all of again, like I didn't even know who Franz was until I got the interview request, right? So I didn't know who anybody was that was considered like a major face in the realm of Reiki, but even in the realm of spirituality. Just a side note I have to tell you. So in San Diego, Deepak Chopra used to have a wellness center here called the Chopra Center. And maybe like a year or so into my exploration, I went to 2 events there. One of the events was like, it was basically a 5-day meditation retreat, but he would always have surprise speakers and guests come throughout the days. Well, one of the days, Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle were the surprise guests. People were losing their minds. Losing their mind. I had no idea who they were.
That's 3 big guns there.
3 big guns. And I had no clue. And I'm just like, why are these people freaking out? And then, so after
now
the fact, yes, now I know. But that's just to say the same is very true for me within the Reiki community. So even when I initially studied with Franz, I didn't realize how well known he was. And at the time where I met Arjava and he became my teacher, I had no idea of how well known he was. Do you know? So the truth is, the Reiki Global Healing Summit that you're a part of this year, I've met and interviewed several people through that medium as well. And again, a lot of times I have no clue who they are prior to interviewing them. And then I find out on the back end, like they're, this well known. So my answer is I have no idea.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's just incredible. There's some really amazing names there. Eckhart Tolle, just all of them are my teachers. All of them. Yeah, Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer. I've got all of their books.
Yes.
So incredible teachers to be in the presence of. So very lucky, very lucky. Yes. Oh, wonderful. But I think maybe one day I have to try and do one of Franz Stein's Shinpenden Reiki Master courses as well.
He's there all the time in the UK. Yeah,
I think he's coming over. But I think to do Reiki 1 and 2, I think he's coming over soon.
Well, send him a message and tell him. Yeah,
I will check.
I'll tell you this too. If he has on there a Reiki play day, go to that.
Okay. I'm writing that down. Reiki play day with Franz.
Yes.
Lovely. I'll look out for that. I'll check his website out again. But that's fabulous. I love that so much. Yeah. So in terms of the energy, so we've covered the Reiki side. We've covered Reiki Radio. And obviously your journey has been profound. It's just been wonderful.
Can I tell you? I'm so sorry, Gwen. It just came to mind. There is someone I want to interview who I haven't. So in this realm, just like you've said, I mean, first of all, when I started, I didn't see really any people of color as like the faces of Reiki, which was very curious to me. And when I first started the podcast, I was looking for people of color to interview. Well, when I started interviewing, and it was hard to find. Now, luckily, you can find more. We're more visible, but not necessarily in the bigger picture of Reiki, like what is well known as like the Reiki community. But fortunately, there's another woman that I met. Her name is Ifatayo, and she is also a student of Franz, and she is from DC, but she lives now in the Carolinas. Anyway, I met her, and she invited me to be a part of this compilation book she's working on that basically is a contribution of stories from different people of color who are Reiki practitioners. And one of her friends was the first Black woman to become a Reiki master.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I have never met her. And so I would love to interview her. Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
I wish I knew her name.
Yeah. I'll look out for that interview.
Yes.
Definitely make sure we know that's who she is. But yeah, it's something we did mention it before we came on the interview. We had our little pre-chat and we talked about that. There aren't enough people of color on high platforms in the world of Reiki.
Yes.
And so it is nice when we see that, when we see people coming up, because it encourages people of color to kind of explore Reiki and other energy modalities and feel welcomed in that space. So it's really important, which is why, as I said, it's really important what you do. Not only spreading the message about Reiki, but as a Black woman, to be a hand that pulls other people towards it as well, which is just fabulous. So yeah,
and that's why it's so exciting to meet you, my love. What we do, and it's gonna keep expanding. And thank you for that.
It is. No, thank you. So so in terms of your because obviously you're a Reiki Master teacher, you're an energetic alchemist. Obviously, we say in England shaman. American, you say shaman, I think. So it's kind of good. I say shaman anyway. But are there any sort of pivotal moments that shaped your understanding of energy healing? So going broader than just Reiki. So anything you can reflect on there or share with us?
Yes. So again, I have to say this to people. One of the things of why I fell so deeply in love with Reiki and energy work as a whole is it's constantly evolving. It's constantly teaching you. And what you think you understand right now will be something totally different or just a broader understanding as you keep practicing. So I love the evolution that happens within the practice. And what started happening was, I would say I was like a kid in a candy store initially with Reiki. I was just like, wow, this is crazy. I can feel heat in my hands. Oh my God, do you feel this? And then, I had my whole healing process, what people call the dark night, I started calling the illumination of the soul, right? So it's really what it was. And then I started having those moments of like doubt as a practitioner, like, wait, is this working? And that pressure that a lot of practitioners will put on themselves of like then hoping someone has an experience or hoping that they feel the tingling and the heat and this. And so I went through that phase of like, I hope the person feels this, right? And then one day, I just didn't care. And I don't know if it was a mood I was in. I don't remember what was going on, but there was one day I approached a session just like, who cares? And I just laid my hands on the person, but there was no effort. I wasn't trying. I wasn't worried about what they were going to experience. I just laid my hands. And in that, I had the most incredible experience. I mean, I was feeling and sensing and saw all kinds of things. And I was like, what is happening? And so I had this realization that if I don't try, but rather just allow, that's really the space I'm supposed to be in with this. But then after that, I started having more experiences of seeing and feeling things more intensely when working with people. So I would see like flashes of what seemed to be past lives, or I would see these different images that seemed like symbols. For example, this one woman, she had peacock feathers all over. I could see peacock feathers when I touched her. And fortunately, I knew her well enough to be able to ask. And she said that that was actually a symbol she had of her mother who had passed away. So then I wanted to understand, what am I seeing? What am I feeling? What is happening? And so I started exploring intuitive development. So I took psychic development classes, mediumship classes, Akashic records, learned how to read oracle cards, like all the things that had to do with intuition. I was hungry for it then because I was like, okay, I'm able to perceive energy now, but I don't know how to translate or understand what I'm perceiving. So it really wasn't so much about being able to tell or convey anything to the clients as much it was just feeding my own curiosity of, what am I experiencing in this shift that's happening within myself? So all of that over time, and why I even refer to my work as energetic alchemy, is because it opened up a pathway where I just became very curious about us as humans. Like, what is our nature? What is our design? Why are we intuitive? Why can I close my eyes and see images? Why can I, with my eyes open, perceive an elephant in the room? Why can I feel the tension in the room? Why can't I, So it was becoming very, very curious about what we're capable of. And so I studied many different philosophies and modalities since then. Reiki kind of opened that huge window of curiosity for me. And now it's just a thing of, that's really what I want to know. Like, I love that Reiki can help us heal, literally, like reduction of physical pain and help to balance emotions and all of these things. But I'm like, but there's this deeper level of what it's awakening us to about ourselves. It's not just helping you get over a breakup or helping you with recovering from surgery. It's showing you something about you. So yeah, I don't even know if I answered your question now, but that's where I am now in this process. That's what I really love to explore, and Reiki has been the catalyst.
It's incredible. So a real sort of awakening sort of happening for you. And so in terms of all these different energetic practices that you've explored and are trained in, how do they kind of complement each other, and how do you decide what kind of approach to take with your clients now? Now you've got all these different tools in your toolbox.
Yeah. It's so funny, Gwen. And I think a lot of practitioners go through this. At first, I thought I had to offer everything. So there was a time, like on my website, it was like card readings, Akashic record readings, Reiki session. Oh my God. It was like a really confused menu. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And like, what do I pick from this menu? Right. Yeah. But then I started to recognize, just because I'm curious about something and I want to study doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a service that I offer to others, but rather this is just something I'm curious about for my own process of healing and awakening. So what it kind of whittled down to is just acknowledging, when people came and I was holding space, what were they really asking for, and what was my natural way of holding space. And it boiled down to Reiki and sometimes intuitive coaching. And that was it. So now, in terms of working with people one-on-one, that's it. You can either, if we're doing just straight Reiki, I'm not telling you anything. It's just energy work, and that's just what it is, because that's all Reiki needs to be, really. But if it's some people, and primarily people like to do intuitive coaching mixed with energy healing, and then I will share what comes through intuitively from that lens. But I also have become very in love with teaching. So that's another, I think I probably teach more now than I do one-on-one work. Yeah. So I teach a lot of different aspects of sharing with people some of the roots and the foundations of Reiki that aren't often taught in like westernized Reiki classes. I think it's important for us to all have some understanding about what is more traditional. So I'm thankful for my teachers that passed that information down to me. And then I will teach other elements that I've learned through other systems that I think are very beneficial in the art of energetic alchemy, or in the art of working with energy. But again, always pointing to how is this awakening you to yourself? What is this showing you about you? What is it showing you about healing? What is it helping you understand about being human? And how does that awareness then start to highlight those principles and the symbols and all of the different elements within the system of Reiki, right? What do you start to recognize of why Yusui Sensei even put the system and structured it in the way that he did? There's a reason. And then when you start to look at other like ancient texts and philosophies and systems, they're all pointing to the same thing. He just gave us a really easy way to work, like really apply something that cracks this open for us. So I love the teaching. I love the podcast because I get to have conversations with people like you. But yeah, the one-on-one, it's pretty much just energy work and intuitive coaching now.
Wow. But it's interesting that, as you say, when we learn these different modalities and different energy techniques, it's so true. It's not about, okay, how can I use this with someone? How can I sell this to someone? How can I make this part of the business?
Right.
But it isn't necessarily about that. It's part of our journey, and it feeds into the core thing. Yes. And you end up pulling information, or somebody might ask a question, and because you studied X, another modality, you're able to kind of answer that, whereas you wouldn't have done before.
Right.
So it completely enriches your current offering of Reiki and teaching and spiritual coaching and
yes.
Intuitive coaching. But yeah, definitely completely agree in terms of Reiki. It is all about rediscovering ourselves and having that compassion, and it's filled with that Buddhist energy of self-compassion and starting with self. And that's why I kind of resonate. Both Western and Eastern are very powerful, but I do find I resonate more with the Eastern side because of that focus on self and focus on intuition a lot more. And I guess normalizing some of the things that we feel and not making it wrong, but giving us space to look at things like our anger or anxiety. And from that, we get to know ourselves more. And that, I think, is why we're here, to be our authentic self. Why be here? Otherwise, we can't be who we truly are. So I love that.
I love what you say about that too, Gwen. It reminds me, within this community, there are so many different ways that people share Reiki if they feel called to share. Some people take the classes or have sessions and it's very personal. They don't necessarily want to teach or be a practitioner, and that's completely fine too. But that's the beauty of the system, is within the community, you'll find so many different ways that people feel called to share. So like I know a lot of people who volunteer and do Reiki, like in the hospitals. There's this woman who actually is the co-host for the summit this year. She does a lot of work with the police department in Chicago. Her and some other volunteers go and do Reiki for 10-minute sessions for I want to say emergency responders, first responders. So the police officers, firefighters. Oh yeah. And
That's
right now,
amazing.
I believe she's working on getting a program within the prison system. And so there's just so many ways. I mean, some people work in hospice care. Some people like to work with just mothers or people going through divorce. Like, it's endless the way that we can take this one system and apply it to supporting and serving various areas of life. And I think that's incredible too.
Yeah. So seeing a lot of students do that now, whatever their vocation, they're finding a way to bring Reiki into that vocation.
Yes.
Whether it's I'm a teacher, I'm bringing it in and I use it to calm the kids down, or I'm a counselor and I set my space and da-da-da-da. So people are finding a way to blend it with their day-to-day, and they're just creating really magical experiences for them and the people that walk into that space now. So people are just, however they're using it, they're using it. Just amazing. Just amazing. Thank you. With the alchemy side of what you do, so how do you define alchemy in the context of healing, and does it differ from Reiki, or does it fall into Reiki as well in terms of that alchemizing?
It's a really good question. You got some good questions, Gwen.
Today, girl.
You do. Like all these years,
some of them you've answered though,
but no,
which is great.
Have asked me these things. Yeah. So yes. So one of the things of spiritual alchemy, and really that's what I think all of this work is. I just don't think it's always obvious to people. And I don't think it's always highlighted or emphasized when we talk about, and especially now. And it may just be the times that we live in, because when you think about prior to social media, and we know we were alive without the internet. Forget about social media. We didn't even have the internet, right? And so there was a time where people really had to search for what their interests were. And people, I probably had a different level of like reverence and respect for what they found, whether it be in a book or a teacher or these things, because it wasn't that easily accessible. And there weren't so many distortions of information, because the information was more limited to the people that were actually researching and practicing and these sorts of things, right? And so now we live in a time where even spirituality has become very trendy in a lot of ways. And so listen, you'll see it's beautiful in a lot of ways that people are now thinking in an alternative way of like, how can I work with crystals? What does energy work do? I want to be high vibe. I remember I used to hear that all the time. And I was like, what is happening, right? So the curiosity of it all, I think, is beautiful. I think it's often the door opener that brings people into a space that they weren't expecting. But I don't think the alchemical side of the work is as obvious or understood. I think for the times that we live in, and because we're so impatient and are used to having everything immediate now, there's just this, I think people like the idea of just something being so like potent and magical and like fluffy and, I think we just love the idea. And so it can be very easy to kind of coast on the surface of all of these things. And when the alchemy starts, when the change starts to occur, if you really do practice what you're reading, hearing about, studying, something's going to start changing in you. That process of purification is going to initiate, whether you think you're consciously doing it or not. But if you're not really in it for your healing, or you're not really willing to surrender to this process of healing, you can resist it. And so then it's like, you just want to get some cool information and have like a cute t-shirt? You know what I mean? Like we really have choice in how far we go. And so when people do really apply, and again, I didn't know this was a potential that could happen. I thought I was there on the surface, like, whoa, sparkly hands. Like I had no idea what I was in for, but I'm so thankful for what started to happen. So what I started to encounter for me, that's what I refer to as energetic alchemy. Reiki started changing me from the inside out, and I didn't even know that's what I was signing up for. So I didn't understand at the time the effect of all that we've held on to for years. When, people throw around energy blocks, I was like, okay, but I didn't really get it until those blocks started moving and emotions started erupting and stuff started to transmute. So things started coming to my awareness. And then my mind started changing in such a way where aspects of myself that I would make excuses for, or just, kind of claim like, that's just who I am, take it or leave it. Listen, I was a little something, okay? Little, woo, and there was no real understanding or accountability for who I was or how I was being. I just understood who I was. So I thought that validated who I was being. Do you know what I mean? And then Reiki comes into my system, and now all of a sudden I'm starting to recognize there's really an effect to the words that I speak and how I may communicate things. And even before it comes out of my mouth, just how I'm even seeing things. And there's really an effect, not just on the person that is going to be holding the catcher's mitt of my projection, but it's affecting my body. So when I started to even recognize how my thoughts would cause my body to respond, like let that fire burn in you and you get upset and you let the story expand, and then you're just like wild and your body is just like vibrating in a uncomfortable way. Once you start recognizing these subtleties, you also start to recognize how damaging so much of how we are being is to us. Forget about who you're trying to fight against, what you're doing to you, right? So that, to me, that's the energetic alchemy. That's so magical of what these practices start to make you aware of, but then also bring you into the clarity that you also have choice. You don't have to hold on to those stories or behaviors. In fact, you get to choose. So I started to recognize it as like, remember those depictions in the old cartoons of like the angel and the devil on the shoulder?
Yes.
I was like, we quite literally have this. So who am I listening to and why? Right? So it was like the energetic alchemy to me, it initiates just through the practice, but then you have to decide if you want to go on the journey of what that is. And really, it's a process of healing, but it's a deep level of transformation. It's not just saying, I'm spiritual. It's not. It's really, it's work, and it can be hard, but it's incredible what you start to recognize, how it starts to change you. Things don't trigger you in the ways that they used to before. I mean, it's just, we don't even have time to talk about all of the beauty of it, right? But that's what energetic alchemy is to me.
And what's that? And there's Dr. Joe Dispenza says it's not enough to know, which is what people do. They kind of know something.
Yes.
And they're quite quick to tell other people this is what you do, but then they're not practicing. And that really is the journey. It's for you to walk the walk, walk the talk, however they say it, and just kind of not just be teaching. You have to live this life. And
100%.
Therefore, it does make you question your decisions and your choices and what you're saying and exactly what you said, how you're saying it. And it isn't always pretty, as you said right at the beginning. You can go through this kind of eruption of emotions and things coming up that is really a test, and you'll have things that come up again and in cycles that trigger you again and again until you've proven that change, it is an alchemy, that it's changed at a deep cellular level. You're no longer the same person.
And facing aspects of you that you had a totally different story around. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like on a basic level, like I would have said, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I'm a caring person. I'm a loving, like all the things. But really to look at like, girl, your behaviors. I mean, like, let's sit down and really talk about what comes out of that mouth sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like to really then recognize beyond whatever my intention was, I was inflicting harm. I was acting carelessly. I was responding with the intent to hurt. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot that you have to sit and look and go like, whoa, like, ooh. And that can be hard for us because again, it may not have been our intent. It's very hard to look at ourselves sometimes and say we're as flawed, so to speak, as we are, but you start to recognize it's not that, it's that we were hurt. Like we're all functioning from these layers of hurt and fear and defensiveness and all. And once you start to really be honest and see that, then that's where that compassion like truly comes in. It's not just like, oh, I'm just so forgiving, I'm just so sweet. Like, no, you understand because you really understand the depth of like who you were being before and why, and where those hurts would stem from and how it would come out in behavior that you didn't even realize. That you can't not look at another human in their suffering and have compassion. You can't, because you really then truly understand it because you are honest with yourself about your version of that. Anyway, sorry. I get really excited about this.
No, it's fabulous. I love it. And it's going back to the authenticity, which also doesn't look like, as you said, being happy, smiley, forgiving. Sometimes it is actually asserting yourself a little bit where previously as a child or young adult, you would have just let that person railroad you or not stand up for yourself. So finding your voice, but finding it in a compassionate way.
Right.
So you have conversations where neither party is feeling that they have to be defensive. It's not a win-lose. It's just, this is how I'm feeling. I'm just expressing myself. And 9 times out of 10, you'll be heard from that perspective. So very powerful reflection. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, I know I've kept you for quite a while. My final question though, Yolanda, thank you so much for this. It's just been incredible talking to you. So in terms of, you are doing a lot. I know what it's like when you're your coaching, your healing, your teaching, always in energy and different people's energies as well. So what practices do you use to kind of maintain your own energetic balance and prevent any kind of burnout or anything like that? What are your sort of daily things that you do or regular things that you do to kind of keep your vibration at a good level?
Yeah, well, it's changed over time. So initially when I started practicing, it was more of, I think, what we expect it's supposed to look like, where I would take time every day to meditate for like long period, like a very long sitting time. And I would, practice hands-on. Like I had very dedicated time blocks for my practice. Whereas now it's not that regimented, although it's still very consistent. So, for example, when I wake up in the morning, I try to pause before reaching for my phone or doing anything else. Like I really take a moment to make sure that my first point of focus is I'm thankful. I'm thankful I woke up. I'm thankful for this day. I'm already setting the intention of whatever it is that I'm doing. And that for me is part of my practice. A huge part of my practice is really managing my mind over everything else. I mean, truly, right? And that's an ongoing thing throughout the day. So I start my day with that first. Then I go for a drive every morning. It's about an hour-long drive. Yes, I go get my coffee at about 4:45 a.m. And then I take a drive and I listen to either an audiobook or a podcast, something to nourish my mind. Because again, I really recognize how what we expose ourselves to can impact our energy. So I want to start my day in curiosity. I want to start my day in mindfulness. So I listen to conversations or audiobooks or whatever it is that put me in that state of wonder for what it is I'm about to do this day. Now, I don't do this on weekends because weekends I want to sleep in. But Monday through Friday, this is what I do. So then I come back and I shower. And depending on the day, sometimes I have to get right into, work. But no matter what type of meeting I'm going to have, whether it's podcast, conversation, session, whatever it is, I always meditate before something, before any interaction, or even if I'm not going to be interacting with another human, but I'm about to work on, say, the PowerPoint for my class. Oh, I'm doing a meditation about it. So I always pause throughout the day. And these aren't long sits. This is like 5 to 10 minutes where I'm bringing my mind back down to center. And then I'm opening and expanding my mind to just a higher guidance. But I'm also very intentional about, like you and I, before we got on this, like I saw you in my mind of like just this heart connection with you and just enjoying this conversation with you. It's that simple. So
the same.
Yeah, see, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I invoke it. I say it. Yeah,
that's why meditation is everything for me. Yes, my mind work is the primary focus of my work, because the mind is all, as we learn in Hermeticism. But yeah, so that's really my focus. And then I do energy. And that's the thing, Gwen. I think sometimes people hear energy work and they put it in the box of just laying of hands or just, I don't know, whatever their practice may be. But every aspect of our expression falls within the umbrella or is a branch within the tree of energy work. Managing your mind. That's why meditation's at the foundation of all of these things. That's part of your energy work. Acknowledging your emotions, allowing things to move through you, allowing, not resisting, part of your energy work. You know what I mean? So my energy work and what I do is really literally woven throughout all day, every day. And it's just a practice of first being an observation of myself and honoring what I observe. That's what it is.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. Oh, Yolanda, thank you so much. As I said, it's so refreshing to kind of speak to you and to thank you for sharing so much about your journey to Reiki. So grateful that we have you.
Thank
presenting Reiki Radio for us. But do you want to take some time before we go to share how people can work with you, reach out to you if they want to do that?
Of course. So my website is theenergeticalchemist.com. Pretty easy. You can follow me on social media, but quite honestly, I'm not that active on social media. I primarily, if you want to kind of check me out, so to speak, just listen to Reiki Radio. The podcast is where you get a lot of insights, but not just from me, from the beautiful people that I get to interview, like Gwen. So I love directing people to the podcast. But definitely to work with me, I have online classes, but I also have an annual mentoring program. It's a year-long program. That's like my staple thing. It's called the Alchemy Circle. You can learn more about that on my website. And that's primarily the best way.
Fabulous. I'll be putting the links below, guys, in the description, so you can check out Yolanda and get in touch with her. So many wonderful offerings. It's just amazing. But yes, thank you so much, Yolanda. It really has been a beautiful conversation with you, which I knew it would. We both put it out there, it seems.
Yes.
But it's just magical, just listening to you and hearing about your journey and your transition and your as you said, your own alchemy, your own journey of alchemy has been really powerful to kind of hear. And I'm sure it will inspire many other people to go deeper into Reiki, which is, I think, what we want, to kind of play with it, kind of Frankenstein way, play with it. Don't overthink it. Just kind of get out there and see where it guides you. And then get out of the way of it sometimes as well.
Yes.
Was a big message I got from that, just that you'll receive so much more when you're just there and present and able to be that conduit, and everything opens up for you. But it's been amazing. Thank you so much. If anyone wants to, we've said I'll put the links down there. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. Comment below. If you have any questions, put them in the comments as well. But I look forward to seeing everyone again very, very soon for the next video, the next guest possibly. But yes, thank you so much, Yolanda. And thank you, everybody.